Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum to all. Welcome to the event Daredevil Born Again. It was voted by the community that I should do something about it. For me, this is something very personal because it's one of those stories within the superhero world that is relatable on so many levels, at a very deeper level. And it's not just with me. The concept that the story that they came up with, even though they started out with a religious theme, if you will, but the story in itself has so much connectivity with each and every person out there that it's hard for us not to relate to the man without fear. So this here is the trade paperback that I have. The day I read this book, I really realized that clearly there's a lot more within the world of comics, within the world of superheroes, that needs to be explored in this particular context. So please, next slide. For those of you who haven't been following me on my social media, you can just simply scan this. The same slide is going to come up at the end, please. Okay, so first up is the background. The background is pretty much interesting, but before I proceed with that, you were saying something?
That's Frank Miller.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly. But I want to ask you guys some question. How many of you have read Dark Knight Returns? You've read it?
I read it.
Okay, so we have one who has read Dark Knight Returns. What do you know about Frank Miller?
He's a very, very like honest and very violent writer. But like he's very honest about his social commentaries.
Social commentaries.
Yes.
Okay. Frank Miller, before doing Dark Knight Returns, was tasked to write Daredevil in the late 70s, early 80s.
Yes.
And he was the one basically whose stories got adapted by the Marvel Netflix series, and he in turn is one responsible for making Daredevil a fourth tier character to an A-list character. Okay. As the audience member has said very concisely, that his social commentary is something that really adds depth to it. But his political commentary and the connectivity that he makes with between the character and a particular religious philosophy is also the reason why he became really popular. This story, however, came back or was requested by requested by Marvel from Frank Miller to do a story about Daredevil after the success of Dark Knight Returns. So people saw, the industry saw that Frank was able to deliver a story that was really out of the box, relatable on so many levels, but at the same time it gave a very important message. So Frank here, he said that I have only one condition when I will do the story. David Mazzucchelli is going to be the artist. David Mazzucchelli and Frank Miller had teamed up again for Batman Year One the next year. So one of the best artists and one of the best writers, they started to come up with this. Now the beauty of it is both of them are Catholics. And Frank Miller had established when he did his earlier run about Daredevil that I want this character to be Catholic. First, the name Bill Everett and Stan Lee came up with was Matt Murdock.
Murdock is a Jewish name.
Irish.
Irish?
Yes, Irish. It's an Irish name, and he's living in Hell's Kitchen. It's pretty much an Irish, Hell's Kitchen is a mixed community, but it has a significant Irish American population. He's blind, he's a lawyer, he's fighting for justice, and then at the same time, all the more reason why he should be connected with the Catholic philosophy of life. From there, they came up with this name, Born Again, which is actually one of the verses from, I think, Gospel of John, if I'm not mistaken. And the story, next slide please. The premise of the story. Now, if you look at it from the get-go, you will find a lot of references from Catholicism. But in reality, that is not exactly the case. Why do you think that? Why do I say that? Anyone have any idea about it?
Why what?
It doesn't, I mean, even though from the face of it, yeah, and when you look at this picture, okay, it gives you a very Catholic Christian impression.
Yes.
And it does. Okay, it's like the slain picture of Prophet Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, and his mother is basically like carrying him when he got crucified.
Cain and Abel, right?
Not Cain and Abel, Sayyidina Isa, Prophet Jesus.
I see. Yeah.
So when he got crucified, that's the picture that they are trying to portray here. But what Frank Miller did was something really groundbreaking. How many of you are aware that Abrahamic faiths like Judaism, Christianity, and Islam were the starting point for the superhero genre?
To an extent, I would.
To an extent. And how do you believe that?
Just observation.
Just observation.
Yes.
Okay. In my earlier talk, basically, I had shed light on what drove Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, creators of Superman, to create the Man of Steel. So they had many influences. It's not just one particular influence that they had. But the main influence that they got was from the Old Testament, or we call Torah. The same story is in the Quran. When mother of Sayyidina Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, she puts him in a basket and
Burn the river.
So that he is safe from the killing of Pharaoh's army, because they wanted to kill every male child of the Israelites. So they took that part along with the virtues of superheroism, which all of the prophets are known for: being selfless, not being selfish, always going out for the people who are downtrodden and everything. And they amalgamated it and they created Man of Steel. Frank Miller did the same thing. But the story he took was the story of, in Roman Catholicism and in much of Christianity as we know right now, but not in Islam, that when Sayyidina Isa alayhi salatu wasalam is being crucified, and before crucifixion, he is lamented, he is demented, he is called an impostor, he is called a false messiah, he is called so many names. And then later on, he starts to create problems for the clergy in Israel, and they become, now it becomes a political war, and they start to bring in the Romans, and then we all know what happens, that he is then led to his crucifixion. Now, according to our beliefs, the person who was taken on the cross was not Sayyidina Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, but according to our Christian brothers and sisters, it was him. And then he rose from the dead. So you have this entire process of being persecuted, being tortured, being killed, and then rising up from the ashes.
Born again.
So Frank Miller adopted the Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster approach to the story. His earlier works in Daredevil, one of the best works I've ever read, but you don't find that thing there, that deep thing that is more connected with history, that is more connected with deeper political problems that humanity has been facing for a greater period of time. And then using that, he makes the story about crucifixion and resurrection. And the reason he was able to do it so phenomenally was the fact that his own background is from Catholicism. He himself is an Irish American. Frank Miller is an Irish American. So he can relate to the character even more. Next. Okay. Now you have received the background story about this particular book, this particular arc, and till now you have heard what Frank Miller and David Mazzucchelli were thinking. But when this gets published, obviously it's not going to be read only by people of Irish descent or people who are Catholics. It's going to be read by everyone, people from all different backgrounds. Why did it become so critically acclaimed? Because it showed us that a real life situation, when we stand up for our principles, unfortunately we are made to believe that you only have to stand for your principles when it comes to bigger, grander moments, but that's not the case. In ordinary life situations, whether we are talking about family or outside of family, you might come across your friend or your relative or your family member doing something wrong, and you have to stand up for that. When you stand up for that, people don't appreciate it. Some people do, very few, but a lot of them don't. And those who don't can go to any extent to finish you from behind. They will never attack you from the front. And this story just shows us what kind of a despicable human is Kingpin Wilson Fisk. The way he creates an entire scenario that up to first few months Matt Murdock is not able to even imagine that whatever downfall he is facing, his license gets cancelled, he is thrown out of his home, he's out on the streets. Huh?
Karen betrayed him.
You have read that story.
Yeah, I did.
So, and Karen represents the naive friend. She makes bad decisions in her life. She ends up in the worst possible situation.
She became desperate.
She becomes desperate. And one of the Kingpin's men was able to extract the information
For
that
drugs.
for drugs.
Yes.
That who exactly is Matt Murdock. The moment Kingpin learns that, he starts his planning and everything, and he makes it look completely clean. But this story tells us something about the process of fall and rise. There is a verse in the Quran which I really like. وَيَمْكُرُونَ وَيَمْكُرُ اللَّهُ وَاللَّهُ خَيْرُ الْمَاكِرِينَ. Your enemy can plan the best strategy against you, to the point that they will be able to eliminate you. But if you are destined to survive, then nobody can touch you. And that panel, when Wilson Fisk realizes that after making his best cleanup job of ensuring that Matt Murdock does not survive the assassination attempt, he is thrown into the Hudson River. But his men aren't able to find the corpse. And then he starts getting himself mentally prepared. The best line from that part is that when he realizes that a man without hope is a man without fear. A lot of people may not agree with this, because being hopeful is an important part for us to overcome our fear. But in the case of Matt Murdock, his house is taken away. His best, very close person betrayed him, even though accidentally, but still. His license is cancelled. He is ostracized. He doesn't even have a roof on top of him. But then he survives the assassination. And somehow he is able to come back with vengeance. Another thing that reminds me from this one is that we all are experiencing hardship in our lives. And one of the key lessons that we learn from this one is that inna ma'al usri yusra, inna ma'al usri yusra. With every hardship there is ease. If I have to judge this story, I think this is the key message that is coming in from the story. Because with tremendous amount of hardship, a man loses his home, a man loses his respect, a man loses his professional recognition,
Loses everything.
everything. And even to a point that he was about to lose his life. But being able to survive all of that gave him the opportunity to come back, rebound, and then take his enemy to task. Next. So the conclusion of what I draw from when I read this story is the fact that we all love DC Comics tremendously, and DC Comics has produced the iconic characters that have defined what superheroism is all about. But Marvel, the success of Marvel lays behind the fact that the more vulnerable the hero, the more relatable is the struggle.
Marvel is the human aspect, and DC is like the grand aspect.
The perfectionist aspect of it. And then, no wonder this story was able to cement Daredevil to the level of Batman at that particular point in time. We need to understand one thing, that at that moment in time, Frank Miller had done briefly some work for DC Comics under the Dark Knight Returns storyline. Then he came to Marvel, did this story, and then later on he did more work for DC Comics, which was Batman Year One, and the rest is history. So the bigger question is, though, based on what we know about the story, which is basically roughly more than 10 comic book issues, can this story be adapted for a movie? Can the story be adapted as a TV series, given the kind of things that we are seeing happening in Marvel Cinematic Universe?
It was briefly adapted as a season 3 Daredevil.
Briefly, loosely, you are right.
Yeah.
But now they have given the name that the upcoming project of Daredevil is going to be called Born Again. Based on, like for example, we have one member here who has read the story, and based on the people who have not read the story but have gotten the introduction to it, do you guys honestly think that this story, with such depth, with such passion and emotions running into it, can it be adapted in a much better way for the silver screen?
It can, but not in the MCU moniker. It should be like a standalone thing. It should be like, in the Batman. The Batman doesn't go inside DCEU. It's just its own thing.
Right.
So if Marvel was willing to adapt it, but in a different, like let's say a what if comic, a what if movie, a what if thing,
Right.
they could make it like in a separate universe. Then every creative freedom that they could do and make they could go all in with the Born Again. This is how you're gonna make a movie or a TV show about Born Again with a better adaptation rather than becoming loosely adapted.
Adapted into it.
Yes.
Fair point, valid point. That it needs to be a standalone project. I, for one, I just don't want anyone from the Marvel Cinematic Universe existing management and the creative team to be looking into this. So that's about it for the talk. If you guys have any questions about the story, about the writer, anything, please let me know. If not, we move on to the next phase, which is going to be the cosplay competition. And we have really interesting candidates over here. Okay, so any questions?
I have no question. I have no questions. Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. Thank you all, and let's now proceed for the cosplay competition. Now, Nahar, please step here. Okay. Your applause for Ibrahim. Your applause for Nahar. So, with the power vested in me, I would like to present you.
Oh my god. I'm viewing paper. Can't see. What is it?
This Daredevil art by David Mazzucchelli, the Apocalypse cover.
Oh.
But that's not it.
Awesome. I'm feeling it, and it's so cool.
And this one's for your office. A Nelson and Murdock law firm.
Dude. Oh, now I could drink coffee.
But for the first runner-up and the only runner-up, we have this excellent comic which was written by Kevin Smith back in the late 90s, part of Marvel Knights series. So this one's for Thank you all for helping us out in finding the winner. Ibrahim, please.
Yeah, I don't know how can I top that. I'm the most simple cosplay ever, you know.
Beauty licensing.
I just wore like the lawyer. I'm the lawyer of him. Because he's a lawyer, and when you saw me, this is the vigilante of him when he fights crime. So basically, I just wore the suit that he wears in court as a normal human being in day, and just bought this stick for 2 riyals to put them together, and yeah, here I am as the simple lawyer of
It's a
my
very,
Murdock.
The
very
simple lawyer.
Yeah, simple lawyer.
It's very simple, but I
And
feel
this is me at night, but this is me at day.
Okay. One
Can I top
question.
that?
Yeah.
Did you take a lead from the 1990s Daredevil costume?
1990s, the one with it's the black one with the red with a few reds, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did take from it.
Mhm.
But like I put my own spin on it because the in the comics he doesn't wear the helmet's not black.
Not red,
It's
yeah,
it's
not
all
red.
it's I put all red.
Great.
And yeah, and I felt like if I didn't have all the red parts, so I just decided that screw it, I'm just gonna wear all red. I'm just gonna wear all black with few red accents, and that's it. Cut it all over. I cut it again. So yeah, that's so this is how I made the phone. It's kind of an amateur thing, but we make it later. I used the 2 sticks. I just bought it from Jarir, and I just cut it in half. Yeah, and that's how.
Basically, this is the alter ego. The guy with the glass.
So basically, the costume. This is a motorcycle armor. It's a very good
The guy who
armor
was waiting
for cosplays in general, and I just put foam into it. It's like red. As you can see, the Daredevil costume is all red, but I'm not all red. I am black with red accents. First thing first, just because it's inspired by the black costume of Daredevil. It has a black costume. Second thing, if you see the comics, sometimes Daredevil is cast in shadows, and these shadows are like black. So that's what I made it black with few reds in it. And what else? Yeah.
I need
And-
to. Sorry, continue. And I need to ask one question from you once you're done.
And I felt like in the cosplay community in general, when they want to wear Daredevil, they just wear the homemade suit of Daredevil, which is very, very simple. Just all black with black bandana, and that's it. So I decided to challenge myself and make my own Daredevil, and I hope you like it. And that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much for all the support. Take good care of it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.